You might have clicked on this video and thought to yourself, really? Bahama Breeze? Of all the things you could cover, you're doing a video on Bahama Breeze? When I think of this type of chain restaurant, I think of news articles from 10 years ago, talking about how millennials were driving so many of them out of business in favor of fast casual restaurants like Chipotle or Shake Shack. We've definitely seen a lot of chain restaurants lose popularity or even go bankrupt, like Ruby Tuesday, TGI Fridays, or Red Lobster. But I think that's more due to mismanagement and the inability to adapt to changing consumer behavior, rather than just an outright societal rejection as older generations die out. In fact, the market seems to have reached equilibrium, and a lot of chain restaurants are doing okay or even thriving, despite the narrative that people are no longer interested. Of the chain restaurant owners out there, one of the best in terms of experience and food quality is Darden, which you may not recognize the name of, but you'll certainly have encountered many of their brands, like Longhorn Steakhouse, Cheddar's, The Capitol Grill, Seasons 52, Eddie V's, Chuy's, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and of course, most famous of all, Olive Garden. I haven't tried all of these restaurants, but of the ones I have, I always go to them and think to myself, wait, why did I think that these were bad? The restaurants are always comfortable and the food is good for the price point, and sometimes I'll even go out of my way for another one of their chains, Yard House, just because I really enjoy their beer selection. For the most part, I've had pretty good experiences with these restaurants, and so it surprised me that Darden announced that they were closing down all of their Bahama Breeze locations and converting them into other restaurant chains that they operate. You might be thinking, okay, who cares? But while Bahama Breeze wasn't the most overtly themed restaurant experience out there, I still can't help but feel a little sad about it. It's kind of like if the Rainforest Cafe closed all of their locations. You don't go in expecting great food, but it is a fun atmosphere. And while Bahama Breeze may not be as maximalist in its theming as a Rainforest Cafe, I do think I'll miss its Bahamian-inspired facade and interior. I know that there are so many people out there who hate chain restaurants on principle, and yes, when you're traveling, you absolutely should go for unique experiences or local eateries, but when you're in a place like Florida, the chain restaurant is just inherently part of the fun. I live in Orlando now, but a place like Bahama Breeze makes me feel like I did when I came here as a kid. Or for this video, I also checked out the Tampa location, which is right on the water, which very much works in its favor as a place to hang out and have a beer and some food. So while this video is a bit of a departure from the usual theme park content I usually post about, I still enjoy themed entertainment and restaurants more broadly. And I wanted to talk about the history of Bahama Breeze, discuss my experience in its last month of operation, and express why it's sad that it failed. So, I can't believe that I'm saying this, but please leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and join me on this tribute for the last days of Bahama Breeze. Something that I find to be fascinating is that if you're going to debut a chain restaurant, Central Florida is absolutely the place to do it. Have you ever been to the Australian-themed Outback Steakhouse? Yeah, it's a chain that started in Tampa. Likewise, the first Olive Garden premiered on International Drive, not too far from Disney in 1982. And, well, Bahama Breeze had its first location open nearby on the same road in 1996. As of making this video, you can still go there, and so that's where I started my journey, which unexpectedly was far more interesting than I anticipated. I walked in, sat down, ordered a light lunch, and then walked around to take some footage of this location, just because I think the theming is interesting. However, I was waited on by Henry, who is fantastic by the way, and I asked him about the location to confirm that it was the original. But what I didn't expect was the Bahama Breeze lore dump, where he took me around the restaurant and explained its history. For example, he took me around to the different art pieces produced by Tad Curry, who, if I recall the information correctly, lived on a boat in the Caribbean and would come on land to sell his art, which Bahama Breeze bought for this first location. While this particular Bahama Breeze has gone through renovation since opening, a lot of that original artwork still remained, and other art that wasn't produced by Tad Curry was still meant to emulate his style, like with this piece over the stone oven. Another highlight that Henry pointed out to me was in the rafters above the bar, which had a dagger stabbed into the beam by the original manager, who climbed up there without a ladder or any kind of safety gear. Hanging on the handle of the dagger was a locket with a recipe for Aruba Red, the signature beer brewed for Bahama Breeze by Anheuser-Busch. If you ask, the beer does have a fictional story about a pirate with the same name, and there's even a story from the old Bahama Breeze website to go along with it. No one knows where she came from, but over 200 years ago she appeared, leading a pack of pirates spreading mischief and mayhem throughout the Caribbean. Nicknamed Aruba Red for her fiery red hair, she was as sly as she was fearless. She would slip aboard ships at sea in the dark of night, scouting for treasure. At sunrise, her pirate band would board the ship and make off with its valuables. It's not the most compelling story out there, but the recipe in the locket is apparently real, and I didn't expect any depth to the Bahama Breeze theming beyond its Bahamian facade. Now, granted, the theming here isn't theme park level, but I still enjoy the overall aesthetic with a high central tin roof supported by wooden beams, with the ground level of the restaurant decorated with stone and tile, juxtaposed with fake potted plants that actually go a long way in making this a pleasant environment. You'll notice bright pops of turquoise and a pastel red to bring in that Bahamian flair among all of the colorful chairs and lighting fixtures, and above the kitchen, there's something about the drums and the beach chair that tie it all together. I also want to point out the seating areas off of the main dining room, which are circular rotundas that feel cozy when you sit in the booths. The food I got here was a light lunch, having ordered the Cuban sandwich and my wife getting the tuna tostada as an entree, along with us sharing Rebecca's key lime pie, which, considering the name, I suspect may have its own story behind it, lost to time from an older version of the Bahama Breeze website, where I think the story of Aruba Red was copy and pasted from. The food here was pretty good, and while Bahama Breeze gets criticism for not serving actual Caribbean food, and is instead a very safe suburban American interpretation of those often bold flavors, I can't say that I didn't enjoy it for the price point, knowing that it was never going to be anywhere near authentic. Bahama Breeze is very much a boomer-coded restaurant, with its safe food choices and light Bahamian theming, something that appeals very much to Florida retirees. However, I still found this to be an enjoyable experience that I'll be sad to lose among themed restaurants, and if you manage to get here before it closes, be sure to try to ask for Henry, as he was an absolutely fantastic server who can tell you all about the history of this location and its former menu items. It's so odd to me that Darden would consider closing Bahama Breeze, especially when it seems to be doing fairly well on International Drive, which is always packed with Orlando tourists on the weekends. What's even stranger is the location in Tampa, which feels like the definitive execution of the idea, even if it's not the original. As a kid, I vaguely remember that my grandparents liked to go here for special occasions, and considering its location is pretty much right on Tampa Bay, it's an absolute vibe. Between the wind from the Gulf of Mexico, the Tampa sun, and the Bahamian-themed exterior, I can see what this location does so well, and when I went, the weather was very nice and the outdoor deck was packed with retirees. This was actually great for me since I could film a mostly empty interior, but while not too different from the International Drive location, this one did stand out because it had a cool aquarium, which, judging from the tiny chairs pulled up to it, is probably popular with kids. The food here was a bit better than the day before because I think we just ordered better menu items, which included the crispy conch fritters as an appetizer, which were actually balanced quite well with the fruit slaw that came on top. For entrees, we shared the jerk mahi mahi and the jerk shrimp pasta, both of which were pretty decent, if a bit generic. If you come here expecting authentic Caribbean food, or even any kind of jerk spice, you're not going to find it. But I can't say that I disliked any of these dishes, as long as you go in with the right expectation of what they are. We also ordered a different dessert, the flaming pineapple butter cake, which came with a tableside rum flambe, which was actually pretty decent. It's not as good as rum cake from Nassau, but it did scratch that itch until my next Caribbean cruise. It's odd that Darden is dismantling the Bahama Breeze brand though, because if you go to this location, or the International Drive one, they actually seem to be doing pretty well. The issue seems to be elsewhere, especially in states outside of Florida, as Darden experienced a 7% decrease in sales in 2024, which resulted in closing 15 locations in 2025. As of producing this video, there are still 28 restaurants remaining, with half of them closing permanently on April 5th, 2026, and the other half closing to be renovated into different Darden brands like Yard House, Chuy's, etc. What's weird about this is that if you look at the International Drive location, it's actually surrounded by every other Darden restaurant within 5 miles, and so, while it's been announced that it'll be converted, there's literally nothing else to convert it to. Tampa is in a similar situation, where it makes little sense to convert it into a different restaurant. While they certainly could, as they don't have the same brands of restaurants nearby, this is absolutely a prime location right on the water that benefits from its theme. And when I tell you that this place is packed with Florida retirees during dinner and on weekends, I really can't help but question why Darden is retiring the Bahama Breeze brand when it does very well in specific locations. Sure, maybe it doesn't do great in certain suburbs around the United States, but if you put them in high tourist areas or on the beach, they seem to be very successful, which makes the retiring of the brand all the more disappointing. Bahama Breeze is very much a staple of tourist-focused chain restaurants, especially in Florida, and to be getting rid of it completely makes me a bit sad, which is why I went and filmed these 2 locations. The food is uncreative but generally decent for the price point, and while not anywhere near Rainforest Cafe level in its theming, I still found the atmosphere to be pleasant and enjoyable when you want to feel like you're on vacation. I usually enjoy most themed entertainment, and Bahama Breeze is something that I will miss, even if it's not really the kind of restaurant I would usually choose. But through this video, I was glad to experience it one last time and learn a little bit about its history, even if there's not a lot of information out there. So if you made it here to the end of the video, let me know what your experience has been if you ever visited one of these restaurants. And if you want to help me out and boost a shorter video, please leave a like if you haven't already done so. As always, if you haven't yet subscribed and hit the bell notification yet either, you can also do so now to be alerted to new videos as they're released.